Good evening, everyone. I've just come back from the pair forum. It is 10 p.m. Things ran a little bit longer throughout the forum, so they ended up cutting the Board of Education part shorter. So we each only answered select questions instead of all the questions which they had sent to us, some of which they had come up with along with CORAD, and some of which were sent in by parents, as I understand it. So I'd like to share with you all my answers and my thoughts on all of the questions. So this would be sort of the extended version of the remarks I was able to give at the forum. So the first question they had asked for us was, what are your ties to Person County, North Carolina? Essentially, what is your connection to the area? So for those of you who don't know me, I am a Person County native, and I was born at Durham Regional Hospital, and I've lived in Timberlake since the day that I came home from the hospital as a baby. I attended Person County schools from kindergarten all the way through my high school graduation. And currently, I practice law here in Roxborough. The next question they asked was, what got you interested in politics and running for the Board of Education? So I started being interested in politics in 8th grade because I wanted to help make positive changes in our systems. And that's also why I became an attorney, to help people in our community. I'm running for the Board of Education because by going through our school system and by helping my little brother to do the same, I have seen things that we can improve for our teachers and students. The third question that they asked was, are there any policy changes or investments that you see as an immediate necessity? So my answer to this focused on a lot of things that are already in my platform. You can see more about it on my website. The link will be in the description as well. That especially while we're in a hybrid learning mode right now, since I say immediate, we can't forget about the shortfalls in our system that we will still need to address when we eventually go back to in-person classes, even though those may be a bit different than they used to be. Now, two of these concerns that I've always emphasized are textbooks and copy resources. Many of our textbooks, including those for science classes, are outdated and falling apart at the seams. And this was the case when I was in school, and it's the case now with my little brother being in high school. There's also not enough funding allocated for copy needs, so teachers have copy rations that they have limiting them every year, and those have been inadequate to meet needs, especially for elementary schools and special education. Now, while funding is set by the state and by the county, I think that these basic needs need to be prioritized more in the budget to make sure we can meet them better than we are now. The long term on that may involve updated copy machines for better efficiency and lower operating costs. Although it is necessary, as far as the hybrid distance education part is concerned, it has had an impact on physical education and on well-being. So while I think it's important that we need to include teaching kids how to do different exercises at home for as long as this situation will continue, whether that's through an instructional video that's actually made by our PE teachers or whether it's through resources that already exist online, there needs to be some emphasis on that added. The fourth question that they asked us: do you think Person County school students would benefit from a school concentrated on a particular discipline or focus? Now, this is one that we did get to address. They chose some of us to address, and I was one that was chosen to address that, but I will share that answer with you all as well here. So I think that specialized schools in a small county like ours would end up spreading resources too thin and create possibly more of an achievement gap when it comes to people who are able to attend those schools and the difference between those schools and the rest of our schools. What our students and community would benefit more from is improving the programs we already have for arts, STEM, computer science, trade skills, and other programs that we have at the high school and at the middle schools and elementary schools, that primary skills that are taught there that build up to that. I think we need to improve the programs that we have across the board rather than focus on a new or changing one of our schools to a specialized school. The fifth question that they asked us: according to the most recent data on academics found for Person County schools, minority students are not achieving as well as their Caucasian peers. What strategies do you think PCS should take in closing the gap? Do you think we are on the right path already in achieving that gap, or can more work be done? So I think a lot of the achievement gap can be traced to socioeconomic disparities in our community. One way that we can lessen the impact of that on our students is by allocating the funding between our schools in an equitable fashion. Schools in middle or upper class areas of the county are able to raise additional funding that schools in lower income areas are not able to match. So we can allocate our funding in a way that helps to functionally bridge that fundraising gap. Another aspect of this is the resources which students have or don't have available at home. One way we can gauge this is through the free and reduced lunch program. Funding is, of course, a limiting factor, but we can work with community organizations such as, Backpack Pals, United Way, and other organizations that may be able to help with this to ensure that kids who are in need are not only fed, but also have the tools that they need to complete their assignments. Internet access is a broader issue here, which we can also advocate for improvement. Hotspots for distant learning is a good step in the right direction. So that's the one thing that we are on the right path with, and of course we have funding help for that. The next question they asked us, sixth question, was mental health, special education, and equity in schools are very important right now in a culture of COVID-19. How do you think we as a system are doing with Plan B, hybrid learning, and equity? With regards to special ed, there have definitely been more challenges with the distance learning aspect. For example, I've seen with my little brother's classes how the teachers, spend the class meeting time rotating between helping individual students to provide them the direction and support they need to complete their assignments. That's not very different from what they have to do in person, but it has been a little bit more challenging for the students to follow and understand their assignments, in a virtual setting without that more of that direct support. So with regard to mental health, counseling as well as therapies like occupational therapy and speech therapy that students receive at the school, those should be available remotely, just like their classes. Telemedicine has expanded a lot during this pandemic, and as a school system, I think we can follow that model and in the same way that we do the distance education to provide those crucial services for our students. And what I think we have done well in all of this is to provide the necessary devices, such as laptops for the students to use, so that they can attend their online classes. The seventh question they asked us was, what are your thoughts on transparency and access to information within the Person County School Board, and how can we communicate better with parents and students? So there is information about the board on the Person County Schools website, but it can be somewhat limited, and the bigger issue is that if people are not actively checking for this information, then they won't know what's going on, what's being considered. So some things are communicated to parents by sending a note home with the student, or emails and the phone notification system that we have that sends automated messages. But that's usually after the fact, after something has been implemented, or only for larger, more noteworthy issues. Information is available if you ask for it at the county office building, such as budget, paperwork, spreadsheets, that sort of thing. And it's also some of that's also available online with the agendas, but again, only if people go ask for it or go look for it, specifically knowing to go look for it. And so I think something that would benefit people with that is to have an email list that parents and students can sign up for to be notified about different budget and policy concerns that are going to be addressed. And if there is an email list like that exists, then that's not something that people are necessarily aware of as much now, and I'm not aware of then. And if it did exist now, or once it's implemented, it's something that needs to be well publicized to parents and students at the beginning of every year and whenever major decisions are up for consideration. The last question they asked us, which I did work into one of my answers to what I did get to talk about, but their last question was, if money was no object and there were no budget constraints, what is one pet project that you would undertake to enrich the lives of teachers and or students? And it was hard to pick just one thing. And so this may sound like more than one thing, but it all comes back to one investment, which is better teacher pay and guaranteeing funding for teacher assistants. Funding comes from the state and is added to by the county, but if money were no object, we could set teacher pay at, first of all, a livable level, but better than that, a stable and attractive level, and we could keep teacher assistants off of the budgetary chopping block that they face every year. By raising teacher pay to a level which can keep and even attract people to teach in this county, that would allow us to improve our STEM, arts, language programs, and to have more one-on-one guidance for students, particularly for their college and career paths. And so those are the questions that PAIR sent to all of us candidates for tonight's forum. Unfortunately, we weren't able to address them all at the forum, but I've given you here now my answers to those questions. And I also have a link in the description to the live stream on Facebook of the PAIR forum, so you can watch the thing as a whole and see everyone else's questions and answers. We had county commissioner candidates there and candidates for state level offices, judicial candidates. So definitely recommend that you go watch the whole forum.